we've established the fonts that we want to use and also the color palette that we want to use for our layout. As far as those colors are concerned, by the way, give me just a second, let me pan over here. All these guys here, all these colors that we created, I'm not sure if I'm going to use them all or not, but at least I have them at my disposal now inside the swatches panel, right? So anyway, we have all of that sorted out. All of these rectangles that we used in the previous exercise, we can toast them. We don't need them because all of these swatches, again, are saved for us inside our new color group in the swatches panel. Okay, great. So now we're ready to actually start designing stuff. And I thought it would be very cool to start things off by designing the logo for the website. This is going to be fun. So here's what I'm going to do. So the name of our fictitious karate school is Ord Karate. That's O-R-D, Karate. So what I'm going to do is I happen to still have the fonts available that I set up way back when. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this first object here, this first text object, which is using that dominant font that I had selected, right? And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this guy, again, just by holding down Option or Alt and dragging on him. Double click on him to open him up. Control or Command A to select all the text, and then I'm going to type in Ord, O-R-D. There we go. And I'll flip back over to my black arrow tool. Maybe scale this guy up just a little bit, something like that. Don't be shy, you can crank him right up if you want to. We can always scale it back if we need to. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to Option or Alt drag on this guy to create a second text object, and then I'll change this text here to read karate. There we go, something like that. All right, now that we have the two text objects created, I'm just going to take a second here and just sort of position them, maybe something like that. I'm not being really careful, and I'm not really sure exactly how I want this to wind up, but I think something like that. I kind of like the K kind of moving into the O in Ord. That's kind of neat. It kind of fits in there almost naturally, right? You can use your arrow keys if you want to nudge things around a little bit, but again, this isn't sort of final positioning at this point. Okay, we've got our two text objects here. I'm going to select them both just by dragging right across both of them, and then over to my swatches panel, and what I'll do is I'll fill them both with that dark red that we had set. Now make sure over in the bottom area of your toolbox, make sure that your fill color swatch is on top, and then, oh, that popped me into my color palette. That's not what I wanted. I want my swatches palette, and it's this color swatch that I'm after, that base red that we had set, right? As a matter of fact, I don't even need my color palette here. There we go. Okay, now the next thing that I want to do, and this is really cool, I love doing this, we're going to use the appearance panel, and we're going to set two strokes on this text object, this logo. So right now I still have two separate text objects, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them both and group them, again, Control or Command G, and then what I'll do is I'll head into my appearance panel, found underneath the window menu, of course, window and then appearance, there we go. Might want to scale this out a little bit. If you haven't worked much with the appearance panel, I'll admit years ago it took me a while, I remember, to get onto the appearance panel to figure out what the heck it was actually doing. So it's telling me that I have a group selected right now on the artboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop into the appearance panel menu and I'm going to say new stroke. So in other words, what I'm doing is I'm not putting a new stroke on the two separate objects. I'm putting a stroke on the entire group, which is pretty cool. But you'll notice that this black stroke that I've created here, let me just zoom in here just for a second so you can see this a little more closely. You can see that it's actually intersecting some of the objects there in those overlapping areas, right? Not quite what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stroke and you can actually drag him up and down inside the appearance panel. I'm going to drop him below contents. In other words, the contents of the group itself. And notice now we don't have that intersecting behavior happening for us. Okay, great. So now the stroke, I hope this makes sense, appears behind the two text objects. So now inside the appearance panel, what I can do is I can crank up the weight of my stroke. I'm going to bring that up to about 3 points, I think is going to be pretty good. And I'm also going to change the color from black to white, just like that. So now we can't see the stroke there. Okay, now I said I wanted to put two strokes on this fella, right? So that's the first guy. I'm going to take this stroke object, if you will, and drag him down. See this little page icon there? that will duplicate out that stroke for me. So now I have 2 3-point white strokes on this text object, this text group, if you will. So I'm going to take the bottommost stroke and I will change his color to black, something like that. And then I'll increase his stroke weight maybe to about 5 or 6, something like that. And there's that double stroke effect happening there. Again, if you've never really worked with this sort of stuff in Illustrator, it takes a little bit of practice, but you can get up to speed pretty quickly. And you can really pull off some very cool results. So let's see, at this point, what I might want to do is I might want to now fiddle around with the positioning of my 2 text objects. Check this out. I'm going to click once on the logo, and of course, it's a group, right? I can actually double click on that group to get inside the group. Now I'm inside the group, and that probably makes no sense at all, but up on the navigation bar here, it's telling me I'm inside a group right now. So now I can select these individual text objects. Again, all I did was double click on the group, right? And now what I can do is start nudging these objects around, just using my arrow keys, something like this, to get that position exactly the way I want. Maybe I want that top part of the K, this part here, running into the R, something like that, right? But I want to be careful of the positioning on the other side of the K into the O, if that makes sense. So, I could sit here for hours fiddling around with this, but I think something like this is going to be okay for our purposes there. To get out of the group now, what I'm going to do is just double click on some white space down on the Illustrator artboard, and now I'm back to regular old Illustrator. There's my group there. A single click will select them. Okay, so you can always move into and out of groups. It's pretty cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I now want to scale this object. I want to position them into the layout. Let's do this now in the next exercise. So just sit tight and we'll get this guy positioned up.